by BBC News staff. Image caption: Scotland Yard's review of all its ongoing sex crime investigations leads the front of the Telegraph. The paper reports on 2 cases which have collapsed in the last week. It adds that the Justice Secretary said police and prosecutors should not be chasing targets but should ask themselves if the evidence is sufficient. Image caption: The Guardian also leads on the review into Scotland Yard's sex crimes investigations. It adds that it could be a potential huge embarrassment for the Met. Image caption: Meanwhile, police action against an alleged Christmas terror plot is carried on the front of The Sun. It reports on dawn raids in Sheffield, Chesterfield and Derbyshire. Image caption: The Mirror also reports on the police raids over a suspected bomb plot. It says 4 men were arrested in Yorkshire and Derbyshire in connection with an imminent Christmas attack. Image caption: The Metro leads on the sentencing of nightclub acid attacker Arthur Collins, who has been jailed for 20 years with an extra 5 years on license. The paper says the 25-year-old inflicted severe burns on 16 nightclub revelers on the 17th of April at Mangerley 8 in Dalston, East London. The judge called him an accomplished and calculating liar who had shown not the slightest remorse. Image caption: New tax blow for millions is the headline on the front of the Daily Express. The paper says the average household faces a council tax rise of £116 a year as caps on local authority budgets have been lifted by the Communities Secretary. It adds, under the announcement by Sajid Javid, councils will now be allowed to raise bills by an extra 1% on top of the agreed maximum increase of 5%. Image caption: The hike in council tax bills also dominates the front of the Mail. It reports it will be the biggest single-year increase in council tax since 2034. Image caption: Yes, the NHS has a very big problem is the headline on the front of the Eye. It relays the Health Secretary's admission claiming the government is offering incentives to boost GP numbers. Image caption: British investment banks may still have to follow EU rules on issues such as bonus caps after Brexit, the Financial Times reports. The paper says the European Commission will set out proposals which would place financial centres outside of the EU with European clients under tougher scrutiny. Image caption: And finally, the Daily Star reports 3 massive storms are heading for the UK over Christmas. It warns of wet and windy weather with the possibility of some places seeing snow on Christmas Day. Several of the papers focus on Scotland Yard's decision to review all of its current sex crime investigations. The Times says the collapse of 2 cases in recent days will increase pressure for a full inquiry into how police handle cases against men accused of rape. It adds that there's a lack of funding for defense lawyers, risking miscarriages of justice. The Daily Telegraph says there are warnings that police are making basic errors in their desperation to improve conviction rates. Merry Taxmas. Meanwhile, the government's decision to allow local authorities in England to increase council tax by almost 6% next year is the lead on the Daily Mail and The Express. The former has the headline Merry Christmas, council tax bills up £100, but this move will not only damage the Conservatives' hard-won reputation as the party of lower taxation, says The Telegraph, but risks looking irresponsible. The Mirror tells readers to blame the government, not their local councils, for the rise. Years of slashing central government funding for town halls has left councils struggling to maintain services, it says. Get news from the BBC in your inbox. Each weekday morning there are calls to end the NHS's dependence on foreign-trained doctors, with General Medical Council figures showing that more than 40% of doctors in some areas of England have qualified abroad. The Mail asks why, with so many young British people desperate to study medicine, can't we train enough doctors of our own? The Times says an attendant problem is that the number of foreign-trained doctors is actually falling and Britain needs to train more doctors to make the NHS sustainable. And in Brexit news, the Financial Times reports that British investment banks would have to follow EU rules on issues such as bonus caps after the UK leaves the EU, under European Commission proposals. The paper says the draft plans show the financial centres will be toughly scrutinised. Bespoke deal back. Talk of a bespoke trade deal is still in some papers after the EU's chief negotiator ruled out a special agreement for London. The Sun says Michel Barnier was talking tough to increase his chances of succeeding Jean-Claude Juncker as president of the European Commission. In the view of The Express, Mr. Barnier has made it quite clear that EU negotiators are not interested in a fair deal for Britain, but wish to punish us for leaving. But The Guardian says leading ministers broadly back Theresa May's plan to pursue a bespoke trade deal, with The Spectator website adding that the real disagreement is likely to come if and when trade-offs have to be made. Image caption: some critics called the spikes a war on wildlife. Finally, environmentalists have reacted angrily after anti-bird spikes were installed on trees in Bristol to protect residents' luxury cars from pigeon poo. According to The Times, residents in the exclusive suburb of Clifton complained that the paintwork of their BMWs and Audis were covered in droppings. One resident tells the Mail there's a big problem with bird droppings in the area and they can really make a mess of cars. But The Telegraph quotes a local Green Party councillor as saying it's a shame seeing trees being literally made uninhabitable to birds. The Sun says one Twitter user wrote, "Now birds aren't allowed in trees. How is it allowed?